The mom apparently stabbed dead by this guy. That guy right there, according to the police, Caleb Barnes, who had been dating and I'm putting that euphemistically, the underage schoolgirl Jamie Sylvanik.
Have you ever stood face to face with a murderer? I have, and it forever changed my perception of people and the nature of human beings. And just to get this out of the way at the beginning, no, this video is not clickbait. This is my real life story about how I worked with a guy who ended up committing heinous acts of violence, and none of us saw it coming. I'm Jake Winters. I write crime fiction, but today I'm going to do something a little different and tell you a true crime story, rather than fiction. A few years ago, I was a sergeant in the Army. One of the soldiers I supervised was a quiet 20-year-old named Caleb Barnes. At the time, he seemed pretty normal. He showed up to work, he trained with us, he ate with us. Nothing about him made me think I was looking at someone who would eventually be charged with murder. Then one weekend, everything changed. At the time, I was stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland. Like most Army units, we spent more time together than we did with our own families. As a supervisor, part of my job wasn't just making sure soldiers did their work. It was checking on them, mentoring them, and trying to catch problems before they became serious. Caleb Barnes wasn't someone who stood out. He wasn't constantly getting into trouble. He wasn't the kind of soldier everyone whispered about. That's one of the unsettling things about stories like this. Real life rarely gives you warning signs as obvious as the ones you see in movies. However, as I look back, there were some red flags that only became meaningful after the fact. I remember I was conducting a routine room inspection of Barnes' barracks room. Anyone who's ever served in the military will know exactly what I'm talking about. As Barnes' supervisor, my job was to check his room, make sure it was up to date according to military regulations and standards, make sure it was clean, the bed was made, and there was nothing that could pose a health risk. Let me tell you, his room was nasty. There was an empty pizza box on his desk, paper strewn about, trash on the floor, and the bathroom hadn't been cleaned for some time. Barnes knew that he had an upcoming room inspection, but he still had failed to clean his room properly. I was actually pretty nice about it. I didn't yell at him, I didn't even give him a failing grade. I just told him to clean the place up, and we would do another inspection at a later date. But there were things about the room that caught my eye. They seemed pretty innocuous at the time, but they stood out to me later, after news of his arrest came out. Barnes had empty cardboard boxes on his desk with multiple slashes and cuts where it looked like he had been stabbing them repeatedly with a knife. There were knives sticking out of the boxes where I assume he had been practicing knife throwing. Nothing that was illegal or even necessarily alarming, but it struck me as odd. He also had some posters on the walls with dark and sinister imagery. I don't recall exactly what the posters said, but he also had a Breaking Benjamin poster. Again, nothing weird there. I love Breaking Benjamin. Liking that band isn't something that should be a red flag. But after the fact, it did stick out to me. Barnes was a quiet guy. He didn't really have friends, wasn't especially social or outgoing. He pretty much stuck to himself, and when he looked at you, you got the feeling that he had thoughts about you in his head that he didn't say aloud. Not exactly unsettling, but a little strange and awkward. One morning, before the unit began its daily physical exercise training, the company commander stood out in front of the formation where the soldiers had assembled. He announced that one of our own had been taken into custody by police the night before, and while he was not at liberty to discuss the details of the arrest, he confirmed that one of the charges was homicide. My fellow soldiers and I looked around at each other, wondering who it might be. Who wasn't at the morning formation? Barnes had an overnight shift, so I wasn't expecting him at training that morning, but I had never imagined that it could have been him. The day before the commander's announcement of the arrest, my direct supervisor had called me on the phone and asked if I had conducted Barnes's vehicle inspection. Again, if you've ever served in the military, you know what these are. Routine inspections of your subordinates' vehicles to ensure they are safe, the lights all work, the insurance is up to date, and so on. I said yes, I did his vehicle inspection last week. My supervisor hung up the phone. I didn't know why he was asking, and I was a little annoyed that he called me up on a weekend for a trivial piece of information that could have waited till Monday. Eventually, we all found out that Caleb Barnes was the one who got arrested. He had been charged with first-degree murder of his girlfriend's mother, tampering with a corpse, and trying to destroy evidence. Here's what I later came to find out, by word of mouth and through local news reports. Barnes, then 20 years old, met his girlfriend at a concert in Pennsylvania. She was 14. Barnes and this girl had begun dating, and he would drive to her house every weekend to visit her in Pennsylvania. Her mother didn't approve of the relationship for some reason, not really sure why, and she urged her daughter not to see him anymore and threatened to report Barnes to the police for having sex with an underage girl. Still, the girl's mother seemed to put up with the relationship, and she accompanied her daughter and Barnes to a concert one night. This Barnes guy really seemed to be into concerts. Barnes and his 14-year-old girlfriend were worried that the girl's mother would break them up, so they discussed over text what to do about her mother. This is the part where things get a little murky. Barnes would later go on to accuse his girlfriend of orchestrating and carrying out the murder, while his girlfriend claimed that the murder was his idea. Regardless of who suggested it first, the couple decided together that they would be better off with her mother out of the picture, so they came up with a plan. That night, Barnes, his underage girlfriend, and her mother returned to the girl's house from a concert. Barnes and the girl were in the back seat as her mother drove. As the mother pulled into the family's driveway and put the car into park, the couple put their plan into action. We don't know who exactly did the actual killing, but we do know that the mother died from multiple stab wounds to her head, neck, and torso. This was just the beginning. The couple then tried to dispose of the body, and then they had sex. Barnes and his girlfriend were actually found naked in the girl's bed an hour after they dumped the mother's body in a shallow grave. It later came to light that the couple went to a store and purchased gloves, bleach, and other cleaning supplies, presumably to clean up the crime scene. The car was found dumped in a pond near the grave. During the trial, Caleb Barnes and his girlfriend turned on each other and tried to blame the other for the murder, which goes to show you how much they really loved each other. Barnes was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His girlfriend agreed to testify against her boyfriend, and she received a sentence of 35 years to life. Once something like that happens, your brain immediately starts replaying every interaction you've ever had with that person. You start asking yourself questions. Did I miss something? Were there warning signs? Was there anything unusual that didn't seem important at the time? Honestly, I remember the poster and the knives stuck in the cardboard boxes, but other than that, there wasn't much. That's what disturbed me the most. He hadn't fit the stereotype most people imagine when they think about someone capable of committing murder. One thing I've thought about ever since is how little we know about the people around us. We see coworkers, neighbors, classmates. We see one version of them, but everyone has an entire life outside the small window where we know them. Sometimes that's perfectly ordinary. Sometimes it isn't. That experience reminded me not to assume I completely understand someone simply because I interact with them every day. Sometimes people ask whether I saw it coming. The truth is, no, I didn't. And that's probably the part that sticks with me the most. It wasn't like the movies. There wasn't dramatic music playing. There wasn't an obvious villain. There was just another soldier. Until suddenly, there wasn't. If you enjoy crime stories, writing, psychology, and storytelling, I'd love to have you subscribe. I'm Jake Winters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.